Can you mention any sort of specific ways that creativity was nurtured?
It was, I don't think it was. I don't think it was. It just happened. It was
Okay.
nurtured. It was nurtured by Evan Roberts himself. Let's say that. I think that's fair to say. So Evan Roberts would say at the beginning of the service, sometimes he would go into the pulpit, sit down in the pulpit, say nothing. He would say nothing. He just sit in the pulpit. And so what he was saying, be open to the Spirit. If the Spirit, one of the things he said very early on in the revival, in the first week of the revival in Lacha, he said, you know, if the Holy Spirit comes upon you and tells you to say something, do it immediately. Instant obedience. So people were nurtured by his example. All right. And it's the example of Evan Roberts that's big. I wrote an academic article with my wife, the only time my wife and I have ever written an article together or a chapter together in a book. And we wrote on the influence of Evan Roberts on the charismatic movement and the Pentecostal movement of the 21st century. And it's huge. It's huge. For instance, if you've ever heard of Azusa Street, 1906, the beginning of the Pentecostal movement in Los Angeles, really, their hero was Evan Roberts. So what they were doing, now they'd never met Evan Roberts, but they'd read about him. So they read about this person and they wanted to do something like Evan Roberts was doing it. Now that had already happened in Wales. So there were many people in Wales who were imitating Evan Roberts, being open. So it was the example of Evan Roberts rather than the teaching, detailed teaching and nurturing. There was no such thing as this is how you do evangelism, or this is the ABC of how to sing and lead a service. There was none of that, none at all. It just happened. But the reality is, you know, they've been having Sunday schools. And lots of people say this, oh, well, the word wasn't central. The word had been central for decades. This was the lighting of that bonfire. You know, November the 5th, I always remember the November the 5th in Britain, where you'd light the bonfire, you prepare the bonfire for the week to come. And then on November the 5th, you'd set it alight. Well, the bonfire had been built, all right, for years and years and years. What 1904 did was not add more to the bonfire, just lit it with gasoline. What, bang, up it goes. Yeah,
That's
it's there.
so great.
Yeah,
I love that. And I love as well, I don't know, Han, whether you think the same here, like the spontaneity, like creativity is spontaneity. And I think sometimes we box it so much within certain categories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the legacy of the revival, I hadn't even thought of that, is that it's letting the Spirit lead and it's not underestimating the power of spontaneity in our creativity.
And spontaneity comes, you see, in the whole... Spontaneity is not always there with you. All right, let me give an example of creativity. So, as I said, 4 years ago, I started writing poetry. I've never written a poem in all my life, never. So I was 61 when I wrote my first poem. And I got up one morning and I had this idea. And so I wrote a poem. And I thought it was pretty good. Actually, it was pretty good. I was really impressed. I took notes on myself. It was very good. But you know, for the next 3 years, I began to write poetry. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, go down, write poetry. Write. Couldn't stop writing. Now I can't write a thing. Nothing. Gone. If I sat down all day today and tried to write a poem, I couldn't write it. And I look at some of the poems, the best poems I wrote, and I think, who wrote that? Who wrote that? Wow, that's pretty good. Couldn't do it now. And sometimes, you know, in this spontaneity, you've got to work with the moment. Work with the moment, and you can't just turn it on and turn it off. You can't. That's the danger, I think, of imitating. And I was speaking at the leadership forum in Wales. Was it last week or the week before? Doing a sort of lecture on this, and telling people the problem with looking at revival is this. People want to time travel, to use H.G. Wells's famous time machine book. People want to time travel back to 1904 and want another 1904. You can't do that. 1904 is its own context. It's totally different. You can't go back to the early church. Lots of people come to me, they say, the early church, that's what we need. Go back to the early church. I say, which one? Do you want to go back to Corinth? Do you want to go back to Galatia? I don't want to go back there because they made a mess of it. All right, there's an evolution and growth. So what we've got to find out is what God is doing right now and respond to that. We can be inspired by the past, absolutely. That's why I read. That's why I read church history. I love church history. I'm inspired by it. I'm inspired by the great heroes and heroines of the faith. But you can't copy them. You mustn't copy them. And when people copy them, it becomes hollow and clangy and echoey and empty. And I don't want that sort of thing. I want it to be genuine and real. And when it's genuine and real, people know the difference. They know the difference. They really do. You know, so that's what my heart is there. And with revival, I always say this. I said it in